Let me just say, I think we have tried to be on the forefront with this, but there is a, lemming mentality in the industry that's widespread to keep the model as it's been, because it's been a multi-billion-dollar industry. A lot of people's jobs are invested in it. A lot of people are invested in keeping the status quo. And, look at what has happened with radio, with print, to some degree with the music industry. And so, I call upon all of, our fellow colleagues in the other cable companies and broadcasters to realize that, it's not that the game is over, but the game is changing. And it's incumbent upon us to change so that we deliver the right thing for the audience and the right thing for the advertisers. It will be good for business. In general, when you follow the consumer and you deliver results, it's good for business. And I just think too many people are wanting to keep it the way it's been.
That's a great mantra.
And I just want to add on to what Carolyn's saying. A couple of years ago, at the ANA, it was introduced the idea of auction buying for media. And you would have thought that, it was a world evolutionary change, because the big advertisers who have no interest in changing the model because it's favorable to them. And they're also, in today's world, changing the model for addressability. It's favorable. They want eyeballs. For a large part, they want eyeballs. They want the model that's in place. So it's, I don't think it's going to be a wholesale model jump to addressability. I think it's going to be a hybrid, and I think that there's going to be people who are going to value buying a mass audience, and then there's going to be others. I mean, we have a huge affluent target that we would like to specifically target. We have a cross-sell mentality at Wells Fargo. People who have certain products, we'd like to advertise other products to them. So I think it's going to be a hybrid between status quo and
let me ask you a follow-up. It's 2010 budget meetings for the joint Wachovia Wells Fargo.
And I'm in them.
That you're in them. and you're going to make the case to management that television, we should put a lot more money because of this addressability. How do you do it?
Well, first of all, if I hear one more soundbite, television is dead, from management. I mean, these are people who don't really understand the model, and but they listen to media a lot, and they hear this over and over.
On television.
On television, and you cannot. It sounds like, thou dost protest too much when you say, but it's the largest reach medium, it's the cheapest one, et cetera. You just sound like, you're protesting too much. So what I need to be able to bring to them is, proof that it's growing the bottom line. And for me, proof would be in our media mix model, proof would be in a test and control market, proof would be in feedback, proof would be in customer focus groups, et cetera. So I think bringing that to the table would go a lot farther than just saying, it's your largest reach media, and addressability is really going to make it even better. So I think bringing that hard data.
So, Bob, I'm going to start with you in this round. You've seen some of the data, right? You've gotten to look at what happened in Huntsville, and you've gotten to look at what happened in Baltimore. What's your sense? Is there insights that come out to you and say, geez, this works and it's a no-brainer? Are there things that sort of we should all know?
Well, I was going to respond to the last comment. I mean, I think when we talk about we want data to, advertisers want addressability, interactivity, but they're going to demand accountability. And I think that's really where we need to get. And it's not about, what we want to deliver to them depends upon where they are and what they want to accomplish. If they want to get reach, then we need to be able to watermark ads and give them actual reach and average frequency of exposure data. I mean, that's what.
But aren't there? Let me push back on that, because.
No, you can't push back.
I can push back.
You're only supposed to ask questions.
Because I knew this.
I'm going to switch to Huntsville now, okay?
So before we get to Huntsville, there are a lot of applications that don't seem to need any accountability. I mean, I'll put on a Visible World hat for a minute. We ran a campaign for Federal Express. It was by zip code, and it was purely showing what was available to Kinko's there. They didn't need an accountable model. They had different offerings. And we talked to people like Home Depot, and they don't want to sell lawnmowers and garage door openers in Manhattan. They'll sell shelving units. Do you really need accountability to justify that?
But they needed to reach an audience.
Well, you said accountability,
no,
so what do you mean by accountability?
That was one of the questions I want to have for you, is like, what does addressability mean? Let's come up with a definition for that. What is accountability? I mean, I go back to my economics lectures, it depends.
That's what they said, it depends?
It depends. But I think we need to start coming up with definitions of these things. So, I think accountability for a campaign that wants a broad reach is what did I reach? how many people did I reach, how many times on average did I reach them? And, and then as they move through the funnel, the questions of accountability, the metrics for accountability will change. And at the end of the day, you want to sell something, so ultimately it's going to get down to there. And if you got to do it with a big, robust market, market response model or something like that, or with a direct response model, those are all going to fit in.
And when you're figuring out what addressability really means, we also figure out what engagement means and digital.
Okay. Do you want to do that today, right now?
It's all got to relate ultimately to sales, right? I mean, engagement hopefully means influencing someone to eventually purchase. And I do think that we can get, already with the internet, we're getting beyond just reach and frequency. We're getting attribution models that help us understand, what is really driving people to some behavior. And those behaviors still tend to end up with things that are actually completed online. But I think we're increasingly seeing, a great example is in financial services where the subsequent, the account exists online, but the activity relates to whether, a simple example, that you could have a lot of customers with a checking account, but the folks that are going into the branches all the time and maintaining low balances aren't very profitable customers. And you can start to understand the difference in the campaigns you've run and how they've actually attracted those customers. And you can then turning that around makes all of this more accountable.
I totally agree that you want to get the sales. Absolutely. You want to sell something. But I think how you get a customer to move through a sales funnel, you want to put an informational tap in that data stream and extract data at the right time, at the right spot to get the value that you need and understand what's going on.
So, Keival, I'm going to ask you a follow-up to what Conrad said and what Lisa said. There's a lot of talk about CRM data, and we know that Google is probably the largest manager of data, but very little in that space, very little about what customers do. Do you have an angst that that's going to be important in television?
And when you say the customer, the end user, is that?
Yeah, the ATM data or what groceries they bought or...
Yeah, no, I think the bigger point for addressability is that it's like beauty. It depends on who is evaluating it. If you're an advertiser and they're DR versus brand, you have different metrics. If you're an end user, your notion of addressability is very different. So I think it depends, and I agree with Bob on that one. In terms of third-party data like in-store purchases or ATM transactions, I think it's absolutely valuable for somebody who is trying to calculate true marginal cost versus marginal profit. You have to tie your TV campaign to in-store lift at some point, even if you're a brand advertiser. I mean, I think sort of in mathematical terms, brand is just, if you take the limit of a brand campaign is a DR campaign. After 10 years, the brand campaign has to produce some sale. Otherwise, it's not going to fund your marketing program. So absolutely, you have to overlay third-party data on top of set-top box impressions or clicks to compute the true ROI. And I think you're going to see a lot more sort of web-like analytics science being brought to the world of TV advertising, starting with the set-top box click. I think the remote control click is a very powerful start. All of us, are using our remote controls every day to send somewhat of a signal. And if you can pick up that signal and figure out what's going on,
But if you had a choice,
valuable.
if you had clicks here and what they did at the ATM here, where do you start?
I think you need both of those. You need to compute the true ROI. You need both.
The other thing, though, is this is a very complex equation at the end of the day, right? Which is, in many ways, what you guys are getting at. But I think the reality is that these are not sort of simple. Too often, we as technologists look at this as simple sort of direct response, right? Is someone going to buy the pizza or not, right? But in fact, what you're doing is you're having a relationship, and that relationship is across platform. It's in many ways, and it's about the ability to speak to that consumer in a way they want to be spoken to, right? The one example that we have is we were embedding products in 24. And, Jack Bauer would, turn around and say, time to use the Cisco this or that, very subtly, I thought.
Where's my carrier Ethernet switch?
Where's my carrier Ethernet switch? I need to hit someone over the head with it. Darn it, they've made it cheaper and lighter now. The reality is that what we did is we began to embed within the Fox website, see how it's done. What we found was people were 4 times more likely to come to our site, and they spent 3 times more there. And we began to have a conversation with tech influencers that happened to be around this artifice of Jack Bauer, right? But it became a very complex conversation. We need to do more of those things, and this data has to empower more of that. If the data ends up just increasingly creating an auction cut rate low-end system, I really worry that we end up destroy, that technology ends up destroying the cultural legacy of the country, which I don't think is really a great thing.
You know what? I just want to agree with Dan wholeheartedly. I mean, we work with BMW is a great example. BMW will tell you that it can take 10 years, almost 15 years to influence an eventual purchase. That they may start when someone's 16 or 18, and the aspiration is to buy a BMW someday, and they may get it when they're 35 to 40. And that value of the brand is, as a big proponent of measurement as I am, we have to be careful what you measure and what it means, because you can destroy the values of brands, and I don't believe that that's what society and consumers want. They identify themselves with the brands, they identify themselves with what they wear, what they drive, where they eat, what they do, and to take that out of the equation and just measure clicks will kill the industry.
I'm going to agree with both of you in that I think we started by saying the consumer is the thing that we have got to keep our eyes on and not think about our own P&L streams and think first about her, but also our brand. And we get very excited by all the technology that exists between us and the consumer, but we can't be inconsistent along the way, much as you can't be inconsistent in any relationship you have. You got to be the same person, same brand, showing up, whether it's in addressable media, online, click-through, whatever. You got to be who you are.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just
Go for it.
can't help myself, but I just the point that I think the emphasis on clicks and sort of that as the vocabulary has really been a contributor for why brand dollars have not come faster and in greater magnitude online. It's essentially, we're not measuring clicks. That's exactly not what we're doing. And if we only measure effectiveness of a branding campaign by a click, we are fundamentally diminishing. We should be spending probably 10 times more than what that analytical equation would tell us to. So we've got to figure something else out, and it's not going to be as nice and scientific. If it is an ATM sale, it's probably, that's a short cycle brand. If it is a 10-year, we've got to figure out new analytics, and they're not going to feel as nice. They're going to be about time spent, or they're going to be about interaction. They're going to feel less closed loop, but they're going to at least get us toward something more measurable than we have today.